We're also talking about another subject that we keep coming back to, actually, on the programme. And yesterday it got you really fired up, including Christine.
Absolutely disgusting what they've done. I think it's absolutely reprehensible. I'm just really shocked.
Don't you buy newspapers?
I do buy a newspaper, but I don't buy the News of the World. And I think I stopped buying it a while ago because I just got absolutely fed up with just the sensationalism of the story. So
you're telling me that you've actually stopped reading tabloids because of the way these stories are portrayed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all sensationalism, and it is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the news. I buy a broadsheet now.
Well, the government's promised an inquiry on the phone hacking issue, but what about other campaigns that have been looking for an inquiry of their own? We've been following the story of Coventry man Joseph Peaty, who was left with HIV and hepatitis C after being treated for haemophilia with infected blood from the NHS. Here's a quick recap of his story.
In the mid-1970s, there was a fantastic new product that was developed, and this had isolated this important protein, and they produced it in freeze-dried form in a little glass vial, and you just mixed it with some water and injected it. And they hadn't got the facilities in this country, and they didn't develop them fast enough, so that they had to import a lot of treatment from America, and they didn't have as stringent controls over where that treatment came from, so they sourced the blood that goes into making it from people like convicts, Skid Row donors, prostitutes, drug users, and of course they pay them, so they're going to keep coming back. The blood that was infected got into the treatment process, and I received hepatitis and then HIV through this treatment.
Joseph is part of the Tainted Blood campaign group, and this morning the group are hitting out at the government's proposed inquiry into phone hacking. Sue Threakall is their chair and joins me on the line. Sue, good morning again. Why are you angry at the government promptly going into this inquiry about phone hacking?
Well, first of all, just to slightly correct what you said, we're not angry at all about the government proposing an inquiry into phone hacking. We don't in any way whatsoever deny the victims of phone hacking an inquiry, or indeed even two inquiries, as I believe David Cameron proposed yesterday, and we fully support them in that matter. Obviously what happened was very wrong. Of course it needs thoroughly investigated, and I would have to support every single word I believe it was Christine said about the tabloid reporting and so on. However, I think we have to face up to the fact that in 5, 10, 15 years' time, this will be yesterday's news, but in 5, 10, 15 years' time, the people in our community will still be living day in, day out with the fallout of what was done to them by the NHS. We've got over 5,000 families across the country having to listen every day virtually now to these sorts of announcements.
So you're furious at David Cameron's immediate agreement to an inquiry, why it's taken, and it is taking, such a long time for them to recognise your calls for an inquiry into the contaminated blood scandal?
Yeah, I mean, we have asked for an inquiry from every government, every successive government.
How many governments have you asked now?
Oh, do you know, I've lost count, but every
Really?
government since about 1985.
OK, that's a fair few administrations.
Time again. I have asked twice recently. One request was completely ignored. The second one was turned down by the Secretary of State for Health on the grounds that this happened a long time ago. That isn't the point. It's not the point at all. We listened to announcements about foreign aid provisions of care for elderly people, where I believe a minister recently announced we have got the money, and we have no problem whatsoever with any of those. We would support them. But we are ignored time and time again with no investigation, no apology, no compensation. However, I would say that our campaign is not just about money, it's about truth, it's about justice. And this, like good reporting, was something our country used to pride itself in. We've spent over 25 years accumulating evidence to support what we're saying. Successive governments have refused to let this evidence ever get aired in a proper court. The only inquiry we have ever had was an independent, privately funded one, and the Department of Health refused to attend it.
So here we have you've been asking for an inquiry with successive governments since 1985 to find out why you in your community received contaminated blood. You feel that you've been shunned now for decades, and whilst you accept that the phone hacking has to be dealt with and there has to be an inquiry, you don't have an issue with that. You just think, well, where's our inquiry?
Yes.
Do you not feel, though, that the problem is that, with the greatest respect, you're a community of 5,000 and you're not front page news?
Well, front page news. I don't think it's even now, it's not very palatable to start talking about nasty diseases like AIDS, hepatitis and that sort of thing. We're not very attractive news. But that doesn't mean to say that it shouldn't be properly addressed.
You're saying the government can force a public inquiry regarding phone hacking of a murdered schoolgirl, yet they refuse to do so for the victims of the worst, you call it, the worst treatment disaster.
Well, no, it wasn't us that called it that. It was Lord Winston and Lord Morris that called it that, the worst treatment
disaster
in the history of the NHS. And that's something that we would absolutely agree with.
And you're also appalled that you feel, and I'm just quoting from your release, that we are governed by people who put phone hacking above life itself.
I believe they do, yes. I think there are probably several reasons why we haven't been dealt with. The reason they give time and time again is about money, it's about the fact that it's all being dealt with and it's been fully addressed and so on, none of which is true. I don't believe it's about money. They can find money when they want it. I think there are probably deeper reasons that they don't want the truth coming out. For example, one of the current ministers, Kenneth Clarke, was Secretary of State for Health from 1988 to 1990. He is now, unbelievably to us, Secretary of State for Justice. We believe that decisions were taken at the time he was Secretary of State for Health that compounded the exposure risk to our community. We believe he was implicated in these decisions, and we believe this is one more reason why they don't want it dealt with. But it's
can I just
why we need a public inquiry.
Sue, how many people have died who've received tainted blood, or their families as a result of being infected with the tainted blood, have died since you've been calling for an inquiry?
Well, I think it's around about the 2,000 mark. I know
2,000?
With HIV, those that received HIV through contaminated blood, the haemophiliacs who received HIV, only a quarter of them are left alive. I think it's about about 300 of them left alive.
And you're still going to keep calling for a public inquiry?
Absolutely, because if we didn't do it, if we didn't keep on with the campaign for justice, and bear in mind the public inquiry is only one part of that. If we didn't keep on, we'd be saying that we had wasted the last 25 years, and people who have literally died campaigning to their last breath would have wasted all those years for nothing. So we can't stop.
Sue Threakall, thank you very much indeed. Got a reaction to that?